Hello, this is Mark. I'll be talking about MBTI, or Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, and I'm going to briefly go over the type that I received by taking the questionnaire. It should be noted that the questionnaire is not going to be fully absolute. There's going to be a bias based on the subjective ideation of what you deem positive or negative, and just how you want how you want your identity to be shaped, or based on the formulation in your own mind. So the accuracy of this test will be predicated based on honesty and honest responses, but it's not going to be not everyone's going to get be designated this such type with a full degree of certainty. So but it is good, it's a good assessment to understand different ways people process information, how different personalities react to certain events, certain circumstances, and why some personalities tend to have an affinity to each other, and then others have some polarity. But it teaches you, to go, to be open to the different modes of and styles of processing, and to not discriminate. Any of everyone is different, and there's a broad range of variation, and if without the variation the world wouldn't be such a great place, or it wouldn't be as positive, and we wouldn't have the novelty and all the reward signaling, and just the variation in all the conversations, and the different range of emotions and so forth. So it's definitely good to exhibit the variation and be open to different personality types and how they behave and act. Basically, MBTI considers 16 total personality types that are built upon the basis of 4 function pairs, and depending on the perceiving and judging functions, each of the stacks pairs are aligned in different ways to dictate the personality type. And the functions that are considered for MBTI are to dictate the dichotomy is introversion, extroversion. You also have thinking and feeling, and you have perceiving and judging, and you also have intuition and sensing. These are the 4 axes that dictate the order of operation. And essentially, MBTI utilizes a scale of you have the primary function at the top, and then you have the secondary, the tertiary, and then the inferior function. As the name suggests, the inferior function is a function that has its polarity to the dominant function, and it's the weakest function within the entire stack. Basically, it's the function that isn't utilized or isn't progressively evolved enough to, and generally it's considered a negative function, or it has a negative effect, and especially in the beginning stages, and then over time you can develop it. But when I took the test, the result I got was INTP. As the name implies, it INTP utilizes introversion for I, which is denoted as I. Intuition is denoted as N, and then thinking is denoted as T, and then perceiving is denoted as P. And because perceiving function is utilized instead of judging, what ends up happening is the judging function is used as a primary function of the stack, and that would be thinking. So an INTP uses introverted thinking as its primary, and then the polar function is extroverted feeling, which is the inferior function. In between the stack, for the primary, you have extroverted intuition, followed by introverted sensing, based on which is a tertiary function. And according to the function stack, you have introverted function followed by extroverted, and then so forth. So you never have a stack such that you have 2 introverted functions followed by 2 extrovert functions. It's always alternating, and that's because the extrovert function, especially like introvert thinking, for instance, in INTP, needs the extroverted intuition to gather an array of ideas to formulate and then to converge those ideas to make sense of everything. So, the extrovert function, it facilitates, it feeds the introvert function. Also, it should be noted that just because someone receives a judging or perceiving attribute does not imply that they conform to these attributes how we define them. The judges don't necessarily judge people, and the perceivers don't necessarily perceive things to a higher degree. It just splits the function of the personalities down, into different sets, which are, the judges who tend to be more orderly, tend to converge on their tasks, tend to be future orientated, and then you have the perceivers who are very spontaneous, who tend to live in the moment, but and they also tend to be more disorderly or disorganized. But it depends on the level of intuition and sensing. The sensors will tend to live in the moments indefinitely, and to some degree they may strive off to the future or the past, but it mainly reside in the present, and intuitives tend to formulate their own imagination. The INTJ, for instance, uses introvert intuition as its dominant, and introvert intuition is essentially what we perceive or we deem as true intuition when it comes to utilizing the subconscious mind that gives us the insights, the instantaneous answers to questions that we've been pondering. And in an INTJ, because it's very strong, the rates or the frequency at which these insights or these subconscious realizations occur is going to be much faster than if it was a inferior function, for instance. So for an INTJ or for introvert intuition, basically what I like to believe, you're always processing, or you're always intaking. Everyone intakes sensory inputs, but for an INTJ, they're kind of saturating their minds with inputs from a wide, broad scale, and on the continuous stream, they're like pulling in the inputs, and it's facilitating an intuitive, response very quickly. So they kind of go about life, it's like flows through this, or they flow through life, relying on this subconscious awareness, and they use extroverted thinking as their secondary. Extrovert thinking kind of feeds the introvert intuition to strive towards future goals, because introvert intuition is, it comes up with the revelations, and then if the extrovert thinking function can feed it, it can come up with these revelations pertaining to reality. And basically, without these people, we wouldn't be able to strive forward or progress in life and have such the technological advance that we have today. People who are very goal orientated are definitely needed in society. And conversely, you have another spectrum, the perceivers tend to be very spontaneous, more chaotic, and depending on whether they use intuition or sensing, it's going to alter the characteristics that they exhibit. But it's I like to think of introvert intuition as just a function that, or intuition is essentially when you pull in inputs, you reach a point of saturation when your subconscious has been fed fully, or think of your subconscious as a three-dimensional, or it's a global function, and you're infilling this this function, this space, and once that's satisfied, once it reaches limits, it's going to basically, once saturated, gives you that instantaneous reaction, but you're not able to pick up the details because it's like fully saturated. It all combines, saturates itself and creates, it pulls everything together, all the components, the links, the connections to build that one answer. And these formulations could be from multiple, it could be years ago, or just you can't really, it's hard to extrapolate or extract where it came from. That's why, the intuition is like a gut, you know, response, or it's very, quick response. So, but for an INTP, who uses extrovert intuitions, it's a little bit different. It's still defined as intuition, but because it's extroverted, essentially what it does is it seeks outward exploration, novelty seeking and ideas and idea, generation. So instead of converging, which is like introverted intuition, it converges on that singular, revelation. Extrovert intuition it's like fusion. So introvert intuition is fusion, and then extrovert intuition is fission. So fission, you're exploring different avenues, and then the introvert thinking can converge on the most probable, or the avenue that makes the most sense. So that's just how the function pairs work. And the problem though with like all the designations, some people put a lot of weight, on their MBTI type, but I believe it's, we all are trying to formulate our identity when we grow up. Some people may diverge away from that because they're trying to obtain success or status, or go down different paths, or maybe they want people to like them, or they they want to fit in. And everyone, we're all not immune to these reactions, but through life, we're all trying to progress forward, and at least hopefully, understanding ourselves and our identity, our absolute identity, or trying to attain our absolute identity, which never really will be reached, because that's just basically, it's all the different decisions and thoughts and ideas and formulations within your mind have to align with your genetic coding. Your genetic coding, gives you, kind of gravitates you towards areas where you'll be satisfied. That's kind of like where your identity comes in. You gravitate in life in different areas. Some people may have strengths in mathematics. Some people may have strengths in English. Some people may be jack of all trades. There's a lot of the variation, and without this variation, if that didn't exist, life would not be as life would definitely not be as fulfilling, just because the variation gives us, and all of our thoughts, emotions, motivations, aspirations, internalizations, the modes of our, the way we process information, it's all unique. And putting this all together, you could think of like this as a divergent, we have diverging characteristics. And, if you think of like entropy, I know I'm kind of going on a tangent, but, this is connected. If you think of like entropy as, order, you have order to disorder. The thing is like in our universe, we see the order of, the alignment of everything, the planets orbiting other galaxies, and, the gravitational pull, which is predicated by mass, it's formulated in such a way that, there is an alignment in all the rotations of all the galaxies that essentially fit together and maintain the order, the synchronicity, and or the synchrony, and so forth. So, and we view it though, but this has been years and years and years of disorder, and then congregation, or the segregation of all of these components, creating the order. So, just with our like divergent lifestyles and the uniqueness, we're converging as a union, like as a society. We're coming, building we're building technology. We're systemizing everything. We're building this order, but we have the disordered, mind, and that's why like we have to um, utilize both aspects, the converging and diverging functions. They definitely have their benefits and some disadvantages, but like whatever disadvantage, that's how you define it in reality, and then it's a function of the basis of normality. So yeah, I mean, this is just, I was trying to give my synopsis of MBTI. I kind of went all over the place, but I'm gonna try to create more videos regarding, try to maintain on topic, and this was just more of an introduction, but I hope the information I portrayed was at least helpful, or I may have had some inconsistencies, but if so, just always comment, and I'm just here to learn, and of course everyone makes mistakes. I make mistakes. I can't even formulate my thoughts every time, all the time, and I just like the reason I got on YouTube recently. It's just like we are realizing we're social creatures, and when you're an introvert, it's it can be harder, but you need some way to get out there and just whether you're speaking to another audience that's not there directly, but indirectly, and it's a good way, good exposure. So kind of gets allows me to learn more, obtain different perspectives, because if I'm always by myself, I only have my own mental space. When you have overlapping space, or when you come to agreements or terms of agreement, that's when your mental space overlaps with someone else, and you can expand your mental space or consciousness, awareness, just understanding in everything in your mind. You can expand that, based on different ideas, because ideas create more ideas and so forth, and it splits, and it keeps splitting as long as you maintain open to it. So yeah, that's this. This is just my synopsis, and hopefully it helped.